Welcome to R&R. My name is Oswald, and today we're going to talk about the hidden costs of leaving home. These movements and the challenges that are associated with them, it's something that people don't talk about it very much. And for Africans or people outside of Africa face issues when making such moves, rarely speak openly about what they're going through, rarely speak about what they're going through emotionally or cultural, social, and financial cost of leaving their homes. Basically, like if I summarize it, I would say yes. If you move or you leave, for example, if you're leaving Africa for Europe or for America or something like that, people celebrate you. And yes, having that passport stamp, it's exciting and it's good. It's something you can brag about and enjoy. And the idea that you are going to face new challenges and opportunities is exciting. And yes, the opportunity is real, and the opportunities that comes with moving are real. There's a lot out there, and you're going to embark in a completely new journey, and therefore the excitement is also real in this situation. But we also have to remember, behind every diaspora smile you see, there's a story. A very, very long story. It's a story of sacrifice. It's a story of struggle, like I said, silent struggle. So these struggles and these truths and sacrifices, unfortunately, normally they never make it into an Instagram post. So you don't really get to see that. It's normally the polished version of the story that is shared, and that makes it makes it look like everything is exciting. But is it true that everything is exciting, everything is nice and dandy? So today let's just focus on those truths of those journeys, and not the polished version that we see on Instagram, and not the success story but that we always hear or see from these people, but the realities, the hardships, and everything that goes behind the scenes. Most people, or most of us, leave home carrying a dream bigger than ourselves. We live with hope, hope for change, hope for something bigger and nicer to happen. We live with ambitions. We want to achieve stuff, and we live with the pressure as well from our loved ones, because then they expectations are really high. But also we live with love. That also has to be included in there. First of all, so you take that airplane or whatever mode of transport you're taking, and then you start the journey, and then you arrive abroad, and instantly you become a beginner again. You become literally like a toddler, I would say. Suddenly, everything you mastered at home becomes irrelevant. And it's smaller things. It doesn't have to be big things. You just come to a country, and then the road signs you don't understand. The signs, the language on the road signs you don't understand. You don't know the systems, the culture, the paperwork, and the unspoken rules. There's unfortunately, not everything can be presented to you beforehand. Like I mentioned, unspoken rules. In most of, I moved to Scandinavia, and there's a lot of unspoken rules, and these are things that you're gonna learn slowly, and it's gonna take a long time. You lose your social capital that you had at home. Back home, you had people who you knew. Your reputation, your strengths, and your abilities were well known. You had friends, you had people to lean on to. And all of a sudden, you are in a country where mainly, maybe if you were invited by a host, then that's the only person you know to begin with. So in so many ways, you start from zero, and no one knows you. And worse of all, if you ask me, no one cares. People don't care. They don't know you're new. They don't know anything. So it's for you to introduce yourself, and it's for you to find your space and place. And that brings you to a reality check real quick, and you realize that the opportunities that you thought about does not equal ease. and maybe the ideas you had of this place that you were moving to could be irrelevant or not real. The jobs are harder to get. The rents are higher than where you're coming from. The system or the systems are rigid. And if you move to a colder countries like the country I moved to, Denmark or Sweden or Norway or Canada, then you realize that also the winter is unforgiving. Okay? So that's just and it depends what time you move. For example, I moved in December, so that was the worst timing for a person moving a country. Some would say it's a nice timing, but for me it was the worst. So then you start to question yourself in ways that you never expected. You know, before these are questions that comes within you that you've never really asked yourself before. Was it really a good decision to move? And this comes really quick. Should I have stayed home? You know, these kind of questions always comes really quick when you just moved. Why is everything so much harder than I imagined? You start to realize all these things that you thought would be very easy, very simple, blah, 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 I'll get a job, I'll get the pay, I'll get the blah, 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 and then you realize that it doesn't work like that. That gap between the dream and the reality is the first hidden cost of migration that you will realize very, very quick. So now, then after that, then you start moving into the identity now. When you live in a society and you hear a word identity shock, you might think, nah, maybe it's not real. But the moment you go abroad, the moment you leave your country, that thing becomes really real. But the moment you come out of that airplane, the first questions you'll be asked, you'll get checked that, hey, you're a foreigner here, you know? So your name becomes a challenge. That's the first thing, you know? What's your name? Hey, my name is blah, 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 blah. And then you say it, and then they ask you the second time or maybe the third time. And all these times they mispronounce it and then maybe shorten it or whatever. And then afterwards they say, can you spell it, for example? So right away you know that, okay, where I'm from, I normally used to say my name and people would quickly know what how it's spelled and everything. But now I'm in a situation where my name is creating issues just as the first thing when you land in a country. And then right away your accents become your label. You know, you say something, then people are like, okay, are you from Ghana? I've had that, you know. I've had those moments where you just say something and then someone is like, are you from this country? Because it becomes a label right away. And this accent label, some might, you know, don't take it negative because some might think it's cute. You know, some likes, you know, I like the way the South African speaks or something like that, or the Tanzanian speaks. And some thinks it's strange. Then they feel like they don't understand you. So then you tend to repeat yourself multiple times to some people just to be understood. And it doesn't guarantee that you'll be understood as you wanted to be understood. They might understand the sentence, but remember, the sentence itself doesn't carry the whole meaning. It can be maybe from your culture, you would mean something else by saying something else. And therefore, right there, you get lost. And then that brings you to a point where it starts this concept of being hyper aware of your Africanness. Right there, then you realize, okay, now I am so African, you know, like something that you never thought before. But then you realize, okay, I'm so African. And then from there, like you just everything, because you can't really change right away. Because when let's say you start a job, the food you bring to work, you find that, okay, even how do you warm fufu, you know, the texture of your hair, you know, some people would be commenting on that or something like that, you know, how deep you laugh, how loud we speak, you know, we Africans speak loud, for example. And then you're just in a bus and you're speaking to your friend on the phone or something, and everyone turns around, you know. The spices you cook with, you know, all that defines you, you know, all that defines you. And you can see that how it is different from everyone else. And therefore it solidifies that Africanness that you feel, you know. But then not only now you really like realize how African you are, but then comes afterwards something that comes quick as well in the early stages of your residing in a different country is the loneliness now. Not that loud loneliness, but the silent type, you know. You become alone. And here I want to explain, because some people will be like, nah, but how can you become alone when you for example, you have a host, or you got married to someone and then you move there? How do you become alone? I can tell you how, because I can testify to it. You become alone in this way because you come from the society where you had this group of people who knew you knew your stories, everything. They know you inside and out. And of course, let's say, for example, you meet someone and then it's your partner. Normally the partner tries so much as much as they can to sort of like give you that social life. And what normally happens is that the partner then gather the partner's friends, and they'll come and embrace you around. They'll come around you and embrace you, but they're not your friends. And actually, these are completely strangers who try very hard to sort of like include you. But that alone can also be strange, because why is this person trying so much to be, so you're trying to get that touch that you had, and you can't find it there. But you can see that they're coming from a good place and they're trying to give you a comfort. I had the same. I had people around me, but they were not my friends. And I really liked and enjoyed the fact that they tried very much, but I was still lonely at the same time, even though I'm surrounded with people. It's because the types of interactions that I'm used to are not there. Even though they're trying very hard. Then you start just quickly missing, your friends' voices, your mother's voice, your family's voices, your father's advice, or your siblings' jokes, for example, depending on what age you've moved, of course. And then you start missing that home language. You start missing speaking because speaking, just changing from your everyday language to speaking English full time, that's exhausting. But then if you, at the same time, obviously, if there's a third language, like I moved to Denmark, then there was a Danish language to listen to every day. Your brain is on overdrive, and then because you're trying to catch and learn, and then at the same time, you get to a point where you really want to speak that Swahili, you really want to speak that Bemba, you really want to speak that language of where you identify with. But then again, apart from that, there's another thing that most Africans especially faces is the pressure to succeed. This maybe is not the same for other cultures, but especially people moving from developing countries. When you leave home, you carry an invisible luggage. You got these 2 bags with you on an airplane, but there's a huge luggage that you have carrying with you, and you know it, and your friends and family back home knows it. The expectations of your family, obviously, like you're leaving, you're going to greener pastures, so there's expectations. The hopes of your community depends on if you're coming from the community where you all like help each other. Then you leaving, they just they hope that will bring some change, and they'll bring with it help and support. They don't even give you time. That's a crazy part. 1 week after you receive a phone call, people asking for money, you don't even know the name of your street. Yeah, even when you are struggling abroad, back home, that rent you have, because there's rent, you pay a place where you live. But this is the rent that you pay for the rest of your life. That's from the cultures that we're coming from. That you always, every month you have to pay something, regardless whether it can be supporting families for school or anything. But you have that rent that you have to pay, and it's always overdue. And then remember, you haven't even, we're talking about when you haven't even settled. But when you have settled, you're working somewhere, you have that stressful job or stresses that comes with job, but also you have these stresses that comes with supporting families at home. You find that you are just exhausted, because these are, like I said, it's the rent that is always overdue, and there's almost no way you can go around it and not and not support people at home. So whether you have that €5 in your account or you have a negative balance, you are still expected to send money, and that's your problem. You have to figure it out, you know. So all of a sudden, quickly you become an emergency fund. When everyone has a little emergency, it comes to you. I need 1,000 nairas for this and this and that. Blah, blah, blah. So you are quickly a fund for emergencies. You are quickly the school fees sponsor. So you'll get phone calls from people you've never heard in your life. The uncle who never talked to you before. The aunt who never seen you. They will all call you and they will, ask you for that school fee for that niece that you've never heard. You'll be the hospital bill fixer. Someone is sick, call this guy. Someone is in emergency room, call this guy. That's it. That's your life from the moment you just touch down. So you basically become a solution for everything, a solution for every family challenge, and you do it because you love them, and you do it because that's just the way we do it. That's just the African way. You do it because that's just your community. If you're from India, for example, that's just because the Indians do that. So you just do it because that's what is expected of you. So you don't feel like it's irrational, but a responsibility. But then again, the emotional cost is heavy. Even though you're doing it, you do it willingly with your heart. Emotionally, it is really heavy on people, because it means that you will sacrifice some of your own dreams to keep others' dreams afloat, to keep the culture or the tradition stand. You avoid saying I can't, because home, if you are abroad, you can, bro. If you are abroad, you can. So you can't, you cannot even say, hey, I can't, or I'm broke. Because if you're abroad, you are never broke. You start living between the gratitude and resentment. You are happy, you are supporting, but you are resenting as well the baggage. Why me? So you become a person who is angry and happy at his actions at the same time. The pressure is real, and almost every diaspora person carries it silently. People might not say it, but that's just the way it is. And I'm giving an example for Africans because I'm myself an African, so I understand it better that way. But I know people from Asia, people from everywhere. If you just move, except for, I would take away developed countries, because like I said, they have these safety nets, and therefore a parent doesn't expect money from their kids, for example, or an uncle will never come and ask you for money, something like that. So you are exempted. But that guilt, for example, that guilt where you have to help, it never leaves. The diaspora guilt is like a shadow, It follows you even when you are on your happiest day, on your happiest week. It follows you, and it's a guilt that some people then because they can't express it, then it becomes apparent in so many other ways. They can be angry. They can show it in so many other ways or in so many other emotions, but not really facing the music. They can't really tell you why are they feeling that way. Feel guilty because you feel like you're missing funerals, stuff you used to do, missing weddings, you're missing your siblings growing up. You feel guilty because you miss your parents aging, and you feel like you should have been there as well in supporting them, because that's just how our culture is built. And the most crazy thing is that even if you succeed and your life is good, that brings also guilt, because you feel guilt that you are successful and people at home are not. They need it more. You feel like they need it more than you do. Yeah. when you are taking a vacation, you feel guilty because you're like, now I'm taking a vacation to Maldives, and then you're just imagining what people are going through home, and you're like, okay, shall I do that, or shall I send this money back home? So there's always that, which moves us to another point, that when you move, you get to a situation where I say you live in between truths, or you live in between cultures, or you live in between countries. You don't have a true home at some point. You are grateful for the opportunities that you have, but yet you mourn the life that you left behind. And this guilt becomes part of your identity now. One of the most painful costs of migration is cultural erosion. You will start feeling this after a number of years of living in a certain country. Your accent shifts without you trying. And it might not, this is funny because when you are in that country, people might still mention that you have heavy accent and wow, you speak very much like an African. But if you move to Africa, people will say, wow, your accent has changed. Again, living in between cultures or in between truths. Your children grow up without your mother tongue, for example. Then it becomes difficult to teach them your own language. Very few actually succeed. But even though they succeed, it's normally like not the same as a kid who grew up in Africa. So you start suffering from that because you feel guilty that you haven't taught them, which is something you shouldn't be. But anyway, your cultural references in life starts to fade. You begin to feel like a stranger both at home and abroad. That is painful, because you are not accepted abroad, and you sort of like kind of expected that, but then you come home and then realize also you are not accepted. You become a person living in space between these two cultures or these two places, and that's very, very difficult. So that's all. If I was to mention the challenges, that would be all of them. And I know there's more challenges, and people face different challenges at different times. Different countries offers different challenges, and where you're from also matters, because if you're moving from South America, maybe you face different challenges if you're moving from Africa, for example, or maybe if you're moving from Asia to Africa, or Asia to the Americas, you face different challenges as the person who is moving from Uganda to those places. We talk about what can you do that will help you to face these issues, and you should be just resilient, and you should just focus on what your goal is, and then just work on each and every challenge that faces you, and you should just always believe that you can endure. You will succeed at the end. You have to have that emotional intelligence, not internalize them. You have to be emotionally intelligent to be able to handle them, so that they don't, at the end of the day, ruin you. Because another thing is that you have to adapt. I've seen a lot of people who live life, a very difficult life abroad, because they refuse to adapt. You want to move your culture to another one's country. That's not gonna work. Of course, culture moves from place to place, and just by people migrating, cultures also migrate. But don't think you'll be the one who will bring that culture. This process is very slow, so don't give yourself a heavy burden of, I want to be here and I want to live like a Zambian. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. You're just gonna be in deeper trouble yourself than and it's not gonna help you at all. So you have to adapt. You have to take things that you think will make your life easy from the culture you are in, and of course try to bring in some of the stuff that you have. So if you food, for example, don't just make Zambian dish every day. Like sometimes just try to learn the local dish at places, because that will make your life easy. You make it easy for you to go eat at people's houses. It will make it easy for you to invite people in for food. Even if you're gonna give them food for one day, but the other day maybe you can make them a pizza. I've seen a lot of people who really are stuck in that, and they live a life that is a not good one for a long time, and they just they end up being the complainers, those people who just complain about everything. You have to have courage as well, because it seems like when you're moving, you're just moving to the land of milk and honey, and that's not true. You have to have courage to face the challenges that I mentioned, because there are challenges, and there will be challenges, whether no matter how you think you are prepared for the move, you will always face these challenges. So you have to face them with courage. And also, lastly, I think you have to move away from that closed perspective that you had. Maybe you had that closed perspective, just thinking about your culture, your tradition, blah, blah, blah. You have to move and have that global perspective, and just accepting that different places do different things, different cultures live different types of lives, and therefore, if you want to move to this culture, you have to adjust, The stories that we have are not stories of only pain, They are also stories of transformation. And when we tell these stories, with honest, we build community, we build identity, and we heal. So if this resonates with you, then welcome home. This is R&R. And please subscribe if you think we've covered something that interests you. But also share to other people if you think they need this kind of knowledge and understanding. And like as well, and comment and give us ideas of what we should talk about next. From R&R is also a peace.